is building. I can hear the momentum. It's the sound of change, the sound of things to come. It's building in our cities, it's building in the towns. It's the song within, waiting to be found. Only you know the part that is written within your heart. One verse, one song, one light shines, one people, one truth, one love divine. You're the missing voice in this symphony. Everyone is needed for true harmony. The melody for you is just behind the doubts. Sing and remember what this life's about. Only you know the part that is written within your heart. One verse, one song, one light shines, one people, one truth, one love divine. We are a one world choir. Lift the vibration higher. Heart as wide as the sky above. Our song can heal, so send it out with love. Yeah, yeah. So would you help me sing the last chorus? Okay, so to recap, one verse, one song, one light shines, one people, one truth, one love divine. Just remember the word one, you're halfway there. We come from the light. Oh yeah, and that's where we go. Please help us. One family, here to learn and grow. Give the gift of you, that is your melody. This song called life, one great symphony. It's time to sing the part that is written within our heart. One verse, one song, one light shines, one people, one truth, one love. One more time, one verse. Here we go. One verse, one song, one light shines, one people, one truth, one love divine, one love divine, one love divine, one love divine.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You're so awake. I love second service. Welcome to second service. I'm really glad to be here. I flew to Oakland last weekend. I was here on Sunday, but I had literally flown in Sunday morning from Oakland. And I was speaking at a conference in Oakland, but when I was on my way there, I was in the plane, and the pilot said, "I'd like you all to look to the right outside your windows. You can see the fires." And we did, and you could see them 30,000 feet up, and I could see the flames. It was really powerful. And I just the destruction, I mean, it's the biggest wildfire that's ever been in California. And a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, a lot of people I know, it actually almost burned down the retreat center where I annually have my Sister Spirit retreat. I mean, the firefighters saved the retreat center. Yeah, right? Yeah, who's clapping for the firefighters? Right? I'm so grateful that people are willing to put their lives on the line, not only for other people's lives, but also for our stuff. And I recognize and know that the most important thing are people's lives. But I also recognize and know that a location has memories and love attached to it. And sometimes the fires come through, and the fires come through not just literally, but the fires come through our lives also. We have different times in our lives that the fires come through. And as I was thinking about that, I really thought about the fact that the most fertile time for a forest is right after a fire, when all the dead brush is burned up, and that ash is the nutrients for new growth. As a matter of fact, there's a pine cone, a pine tree, the jack pine, that only will, the pine cone will only open up when there's a fire. There has to be a fire for this to reproduce, for it to birth anew into life, for it to give seed into the world. And I recognize and know that sometimes I'm looking at the fire in my life, and I'm not necessarily looking at the new birth that comes as a result of it. And it is painful to experience the death and the destruction, but there's such beauty in the newness that comes as a result of it. One of my favorite Hindu goddesses is Kali. And I love Kali. She embodies Shakti, the feminine energy, which is creativity and fertility. She's the goddess of change, and the goddess of death, and the goddess of creativity, and the goddess of fertility. And she's really cool because she's all black with her tongue hanging out, and she's got heads, human heads all over her, a necklace of human heads, and these arms. I mean, it seems pretty gruesome, right? Like, these Hindu people, they're serious with their gods and goddesses. You thought we invented death and destruction in our crazy movies, but no, the Hindus had it a long time ago. And the Hindu gods and goddesses are really not a multitude of gods and goddesses. They're a multitude of expressions of the one God. The multitude of expressions of the one God. And what I appreciate about the Hindus is that they see this aspect as divine creation. They see this death and destruction as creativity, fertilization, and rebirth. And they honor it. And I think that having that sense of worshipful honoring and appreciation of the new is so important for me to be reminded of in my life. She also has this big knife that's like bloody. I know, it's terrible. and a human head on one of her arms. She's got sometimes 4 arms, sometimes 8 arms. But a knife and a human head, which the knife represents divine wisdom. And the human head represents the ego. So she cut the ego off because divine wisdom is the truth. And so she's an embodiment of the representation of that divine wisdom. And because of her coloring, she represents the embodiment of ultimate creativity, the unmanifest potential. And I recognize and know that I've been in this big change in my life. I was called forth to come here, to step into this community, to participate with all of you. And it's been a big change in my life. It's been huge. My wife and I left our friends and our families, and we came here, and I've been embraced by open and welcoming arms and such deep love. And at the same time, I'm recognizing and knowing the uncomfortability of being in that change, being in a different place, not knowing where the heck I'm going. So proud of myself for not using GPS to get here and get home. Oh my God. But I recognize I got the change first. I got to be in the change to begin with first. And now we as a community are going through this huge change. We as a community are going through this opportunity to have a clearing out, a releasing, and a welcoming of the new. I was cutting my rose bushes yesterday, and I have this amazing garden at my house. It's so beautiful, but it's also like 4 years overgrown. And I was trimming the rose bush, and the rose bush had all these, the branches were all gnarled and intertwined, and it was like intensely all worked together, and there was dead branches inside of it. And as I was cutting away and cleaning out and releasing the old and the worn down and the tired, I was able to see the new sprouts and the blooms that were just about ready to come through. But I wouldn't have been able to see it if I wasn't willing to clean out and release and surrender all that which wasn't serving the rose bush. And I thought it was a really great metaphor for my life. As I was leaving California, I was cleaning out, I was releasing all that which no longer serves me. And I was preparing my soil for a new growth. Now, how many people here want something new and even greater to occur in their life? Anybody? Oh, yeah, a few people. Well, I recognize and know that you called forth this community to come forth into transition at this time and in this place because you wanted something magnificent to come forth. And it maybe didn't look like how you thought it was going to look, but it's looking how it's looking because it's an opportunity for you to step forward into a new way of being. Studies show that our neural pathways in our brains, they become like highways because we get automatic, and then we have these highways, ways of thinking, ways of being, belief systems that get, they're like valleys and highways in our brains. And the way to cause a new idea, a new way of thinking, and a new belief is to do something different. We're literally all moving like 1.5 miles away. We don't need a fire to burn down. All we got to do is shift locations. And what that's going to bring into your life is the idea of newness, a new possibility, a new way of doing things. And yes, it's uncomfortable. But it's an invitation to embrace the change as a new opportunity. Think about what would I like to bring forth in my life? What new idea, what new possibility, what new way of being would I like to bring forth into my life? And use this change as an opportunity to shift what's been going on in your life in order to bring forth that new opportunity. Now, this is happening at a greater scale. Today is the 1-year anniversary of an alt-right neo-Nazi white supremacist march that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. And as a result of that march, 3 people died, and there was a lot of contention. And I was surprised. I was shocked. I thought, wow, somebody's in the KKK, and they are announcing it on TV and proud of it. And that made me very uncomfortable. And And they want to preserve the white race. And I'm white. And I don't have the same beliefs. I'm not in alignment with that. I feel like they are out there, they don't represent me. And yet, how do I bridge the gap? How do I stop thinking of somebody out there like that as a they? How do I start bringing into the idea that some part of them represents some part of me? And I watched this movie called White Right, Meeting the Enemy. This woman named Dia Khan interviewed American far-righters and neo-Nazis to figure out why. Why do they believe the way that they believe? Now, Dia is not American. She is brown-skinned, and she's Muslim. And she managed to be the only videographer approved to march with the white supremacists. I would not have volunteered to do that. And I'm clearly white. So I was so enamored of this woman and her courage and her willingness. And there she is in the middle of all these people who are, kill the Jews and saying very inappropriate things about brown-skinned people. Like, she's walking with them and recording them on video while they're saying all these hateful, damaging, harmful words. And then after that, she goes through and she does interviews with different people who are on the podium and spouting their belief systems. And it takes her several months where she goes to these gentlemen's houses and she interviews with them. But she doesn't say, "Oh, this is my belief system, and I want you to hear what I have to say." She says, I want to hear what you believe, and I want to hear why you believe it. I just want to understand you. And she listens, and she interviews, and she hangs out at their houses. She hangs out with them. She befriends them. And there was one gentleman. His name is Ken Parker. And he was one of the people who was speaking. He's a former Grand Dragon of the KKK. And as she was interviewing him, he was putting together little packets of paperwork with talking about killing the Jews and then dropping them off in Jewish neighborhoods. And so she's just at his house hanging out with him. And she starts having a dialogue with him. Like, if this were harming me, would you still do this? And he was like, yes, I would still do this. And then she starts getting deeper into conversations of, do you really think that this harms people? Oh, no, I just think it's funny. And then she starts asking even more questions of like, would you do this to me? She asked one of the white nationalist chairmen. Would you, I'm an immigrant, would you say that you don't want me to be in this country? And at first he's like, oh, but you're my friend. I wouldn't say that to you. But yes, I would say that to you. And then later on, she gets a phone call from this guy who says, I resigned my job. And I want you to know part of the reason why I resigned my job is because I couldn't say that to you. So she was willing to be a human, and she was willing to befriend the so-called enemy. And the more I watched this movie, the more I realized that there were people who were in a skinhead gang. This gentleman was in a skinhead gang, and he was in a skinhead band, and he was promoting beating up any other race except white races. And he himself went out and did that. And he has since changed his mind because he had a baby. And he regrets everything that he did. And she talked to him, and she said, why, what was it? And he talked about never being liked. and being beat up when he was a child and never being accepted, and finally finding a group of people where he felt like he belonged, where somebody actually listened to him and saw him as a human being. Now, I think maybe we can do that without having to have people go into gangs. But you and I have to be willing to have those conversations. Brené Brown says in Braving the Wilderness, she says, you can't hate somebody close up. It's really hard to say somebody who's sitting in front of you, I would deport you, but you're my friend. And I think that that's the conversations that we need to be having. We need to be willing to not be telling somebody what I think they should be doing, but listening to them and being willing to hear them out to find out where is that common ground, or where can I see that this person is a human just like me, and maybe they will say the same thing in return. Ernest Holmes said, we shall have to see that God in us recognizes God in the other person until the God in the other person recognizes the God in us. And I recognize and know it may be challenging to do that. But Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that has. I'm a big fan of Jean Houston. I know she was here. She has this exercise that she does. It's called Trim Tab. And I'm really captivated by the Trim Tab. Now, if you're on a cruise ship, they have a gigantic rudder. And the rudder is like the size of a normal room, a gigantic room. And on this rudder is a little 1 foot by 1 foot square called the Trim Tab. In order to turn a cruise ship, the rudder has to turn, but it takes a lot to turn the rudder. In order to make the rudder turn, this little 1 foot by 1 foot square turns. And that is enough of a change to make the entire rudder turn. And then when the entire rudder turns, the entire cruise ship turns. Now, I think that you and I can be the trim tab for our world. I believe that we're leaving an old paradigm. The old paradigm was a paradigm of me, and the new paradigm is a paradigm of we. And I was thinking about how can we be the trim tab for our world? And I was thinking about the power of group intention. Now, how many here believe that group intention can change things? Yeah. And I would have said group prayer because group prayer and group intention is the same thing, but some of you may not be that connected to prayer. But just so you know, group intention and group prayer is the same thing. I was thinking that today there is a white nationalist rally happening right now in Washington, D.C. And maybe we could be the committed group of individuals who changes things with our group intention. I was thinking maybe we could have a little short dialogue, like what would you love? If we could make a difference for that group of people, what would you love? Anybody? I'd love to send them all love. Anybody else? Understanding, connection, compassion. To heal the hurt, peace. A mirror. To know we're all one. Help them not be afraid, which is being safe, right? Safety, connection, love. Healing, not a cure, but the healing. Huh? Appreciation. Oh, wow. Can we appreciate? Can we love somebody so deeply? That's some courageous stuff right there. I'd like for us to sit for 1 minute and pick all of those words or one of those words. And I'd like to collectively make a group intention around that. And together imagine everybody at that rally, at that march, and see if we can send them that. Let's start. The 1 minute is over. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Dia Khan, when she interviewed these people, she didn't realize that her interviews would have effects on these men. And especially the gentleman, Ken Parker, the former dragon of the KKK, who after several of her meetings with her, and then he was befriended by a black pastor in his hometown, realized that he was spewing hate and he didn't want to be that person anymore. And he joined a community church that was all black, that he and his girlfriend are 2 white individuals in the entire community. And he did his testimony saying that he was a former member of the KKK. Now, if that's possible from one person, what's possible with all of us? Change happens. People can change. How many of you are the same person you were 10 years ago? Right? Thank God I'm not. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. But one thing that I recognize and know that partly it's because, I picked this title, Be Careful What You Wish For, because we have this book of the month, of Move Your Stuff, Change Your Life, and it's about feng shui. And it's actually one of the titles in the book, but what I love about feng shui, it talks about how when we change the external, then our internal changes. And it goes the same way. When we change our internal, then the external changes. Everything is interconnected, and whenever we change those various things in our lives, we have change and we have an intention, then we not only pray, we treat, we call it a treat prayer, affirmative prayer treatment, we move our feet, right? So we take action in the direction of what we'd like to have manifesting. And while the white rallies seemed like a really, for me, it was a hard thing to witness. Now, watching this woman's documentary, I'm shocked and in awe of the infinite way of transforming the men's lives that were involved in those rallies. And that they are now spokespeople for love. Now, how can that happen? The only way that happens is by each and every one of us being willing to see that not as a horrible, tremendous act, which it is hard for people to be so hateful, but as a call for help and healing. And whenever I see the call for help and healing, it reminds me that I get to be the opportunity to be the healing in the world, that I get to be the one who steps forward into having courageous conversations, who steps forward into finding the areas where I see the other and seeing if maybe I can see the one, where I can see how I can be a voice of love and appreciation for somebody who I think is the other. Now, sometimes that person who is challenging me, they come forth, they rise forth in their life because they are a catalyst for me to step forward into my greatness. They're a catalyst. They're the kind of pushing up against in order for me to rise to my greater yet to be. And so you might think of how each and every person speaks about what's going on in their lives. We have the opportunity to speak forth a new reality. We have the opportunity to step forward into a new paradigm of being and speaking in the world. So be careful what you speak. Not just be careful what you wish for, but be careful what you speak. If you wanted a healing, then this is an opportunity for a healing. My wife and I were at Stanford University. We both used to work there. And we were sitting in our car. She brought me lunch one day. And we were sitting in her car eating lunch. We're in a residential area around Stanford. And we were in a cul-de-sac. And there was this woman who opened her garage door across the street. And she starts driving her car closer and closer and closer. We're on the other side of the street in the cul-de-sac parked. And she's closer and closer. And my wife says, "It's okay, you can hit us." And she does. And then she said, "Well, I didn't mean that for that to happen." I'm like, "Well, you said it." Our words have power. And if we can speak words of love, and if we can speak the new idea of possibility into this world, into this room, into our community, we can bring forth that idea that we are creating a world that works for everyone. And the world that works for everyone is a world where I need to look at my uncomfortable spots, where I need to look at those places where I am shaming or harming or damning another. Because when I'm doing that to another, I'm doing that to myself. And I'm introducing the possibility that I could be a space where love shows up. You could be a space for love to show up. And I was really thinking about how we could do this together in community. But then I thought about, what is community? What is community? What is community to you? Togetherness and connection. An opportunity to learn, sharing, support, caring, love, accountability, oneness. Huh? Fun. We. Thank you, Jerry. I really appreciate this community because I've felt loved and appreciated and welcomed into this community. And I recognize and know that the men that were in that movie or in that movement were in that movement because they didn't have a place to belong. And I want to be a place of belonging. And I'd like this place to be a place of belonging. But I recognize and know that it's not the physical location that causes somebody to feel belonging. It's us. We create the belonging. Whether we're at Mountaineers or whatever the future location is, it doesn't matter. It's up to us to create that space of belonging. And I recognize and know that each and every one of us is, I'm the opportunity to accept that in my life. If I feel like I belong with you, then you feel like you belong with me. And so I want to introduce you to the idea that you and I belong to each other. And I'd like you to think about that when you see every person in this community, that you and I belong to each other. And I want you to practice that here in this community. And I want you to practice that out into the greater community. How can I belong to you? How can you belong to me? And the way we do that is by serving, uplifting, and empowering each other. I want to encourage you to be a space of belonging here for everybody who walks in for the first time. I want to encourage you to be a space of belonging for anybody who's felt like they were alone. Has anybody felt like they were alone ever? Yeah. Now, what if we were that open arm space? I know that each and every one of us can contribute to that idea of possibility of belonging. And it also means that each and every one of us has the opportunity to serve Because in order to belong, it means I'm serving you. And I'm going to ask for your support as we're moving locations. We all need to serve each other. We need to serve this greater community, and we need to serve each other in the greater world. So think about, what ways can I serve this community? What ways can I serve out in the greater world? What ways can I be a space of belonging to each and every person I meet? Especially if they don't look like me, especially if they don't act like me, especially if they don't believe like me. Are you willing to be that courageous and take this on with me? Yeah. Are you willing to be that courageous and take this on with me? If you are, raise your hand. Oh, yeah. Now, everybody who doesn't raise their hand, like, oh my God, I'm not ready yet. No, this is not a shaming moment, but really, raise your hand. No. Yeah. I'm so grateful that I'm here with all of you, because I'm so proud and honored and overjoyed to be in this space with such magnificent souls. You inspire me, you light me up, you make me feel like this is a place, this is the kind of world I want to belong in. And I know that if you created that here for me, that you can create that for everybody that we see. So let's do this, and let's take this out into the world and be the ambassadors of life, be the ambassadors of love, be the ambassadors of connection, be the ambassadors of truth, and let this be what the we world looks like. And so it is. Let's pray. And as I recognize that this is a space where God shows up, some people may not call it God, they might just call it love, or connection, or the quantum field. Whatever it is that you call it, that you know is that interconnected, infinite everything of creation, welcome it here into your heart, into your soul, as I am here in mine. Oh. All I can hear is the words, I love you. And I know that's for the little me that's scared to speak up sometimes. And I know that's for me that's currently in Washington, D.C. I love you. I know it's the me that is afraid and forgotten who I am. I just love that part of me. And I know that that's what God does right now. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this group of people. I'm so grateful for this change of consciousness, this realization, this opening, this revelation that is happening on this planet. I know that I'm here to be a part of it all. And I know that each person here is a part of that grand reawakening. That whatever fires are happening, that there is safety in love. That there is rebirth, there's recreation, there's renewing. And so I just hold that space of love, knowing all is in divine order and all is well. And I release this prayer with deep gratitude. I'm grateful, and so it is.